my dear students, welcome to computer science class. In our previous video classes, we have discussed few of the algorithms. Today we shall start with a new topic, that is analysis of algorithm. When we write any algorithm, it might have different ways to write. You can use the for loop, you can write the same program using while loop, you can write the same program with the do while loop. So how do you analyze this? Which algorithm is the best algorithm? That is based upon the space complexity and the time complexity. What is a space complexity? Space complexity is nothing but the amount of memory that is needed by the algorithm to complete it run. Suppose for an example, a same algorithm, okay, I might have written to find out the sum of digits. I may use it while loop, or I may even write it with a do while loop. If I write with a while loop, it may hardly take around certain 15 steps. So the same thing if I write it with a do while, say maybe around it may take around 18 steps. So which you can say the best algorithm is the one which requires the minimum amount of memory that is needed to complete it run. Then I can call it as a space complexity, based upon the algorithm which takes the minimum amount of memory in order to complete its run, in the sense in order to execute the minimum amount of memory what it is taking. Then such an algorithm I can say it is the best approach. Similarly, I do have the time complexity. What is this time complexity? The amount of time the algorithm needed to complete its run. That means the minimum amount which algorithm will take in order to execute it completely, that algorithm I can say that it's a best algorithm. So in order to analyze which algorithm is the best, we need both the space as well as the time complexity. Space is nothing but the minimum amount of memory that is needed to execute your algorithm, and the time is nothing but the minimum amount time taken by algorithm to complete its execution. Based upon these two, we are going to analyze the algorithm. Apart from that, our analysis of algorithm also depends upon the input data, the amount of time required by an algorithm in order to read the input data. Suppose for an example, if I am giving only one input to an algorithm, input n, then it takes hardly very few seconds for few milliseconds it will take for an algorithm to read the input. Suppose in that case, if I give around 3 inputs, if I give, then maybe from few milliseconds to seconds it may take. Suppose if I give around 5 to 6 input to be read by the algorithm, then it may take more than that. So like this, the analysis of algorithm also depends upon the given input data. So in that, the first one is the best case. What is this best case? The minimum amount of a time that a program might be expected to take on best possible input data. The very short time, okay, the minimum amount of time. Obviously when I give the input only one input data, it takes hardly minimum amount in order to read the input data. The more fast it will read the input data, the more fast the execution would be. So this we call it as a best case. Next is what is the average case. What is an average case? The minimum, again here, the amount of time that a program might be expected to take an average input data, around 2 or 3 input data. The average time if an algorithm takes to read your given input data when you go for the execution, so that we call it as an average case. Then what would be the worst case? The worst case is nothing but it is the amount of time the program would take in order to read the worst possible input configuration. If at all, if it is a more input data if you're giving, then we call it as a worst case. So depending upon these 3 cases, even our analysis of algorithm depends upon the input data. Very important definition, that is the space complexity and the time complexity. The next topic is time-space trade-off. See, the best algorithm is a one which requires a very less space complexity and very less minimum amount of time for its execution. But practically both it is not possible to achieve. Either you can achieve the space complexity or either you can achieve for the time complexity. So let us move on to the next topic. That's what trade-off we have completed. Next one is what? Pseudocode. What exactly this pseudocode is? Pseudocode is nothing but it's just shorthand notation. Okay, it is a shorthand notation which actually provides you the description of the flow and logic of the program. Whichever the program you have written, it gives you in the a very shorthand notation. Now this pseudocode could be written in a plain language, okay, that expresses the each step of an algorithm. So usually the pseudocode we actually use it for the shorthand notation for the control structure and other elements of the programming languages. Now this pseudocode what we are writing, neither it is a program nor it is a algorithm, but it is very nearer to the program. That is why in the stepwise refinement technique, what happens, whatever the informal algorithm we have written, first it will be converted to the pseudo language, then it will be converted into the C or C++. Pseudo code is nothing but it is a shorthand notation that is used to control the structure and other elements. Now this pseudo code actually, like how it will be written move 5686, like that, a shorthand notation it will be written add 75 comma 85. Now this is a simple instructions, okay, like this pseudocodes will be there. It is neither we can call it as an algorithm, neither we can call it as a program. It is very nearer to the program. That's why whatever the notations you are writing in the pseudocode could be easily converted into the given program. So this is what about the pseudocode, and thus it is easy to convert the pseudocode into the program. Moving on to the very next important topic, that is the flowchart. A very important definition from your annual exam point of view. What is this flowchart? Flowchart is nothing but it's a diagrammatic representation of an algorithm. We call it as an flowchart. So in our regular classes also, first we had written algorithm, based upon algorithm we could draw the flowchart, based upon flowchart we had written the programs, isn't it? So therefore what would be the definition of an flowchart is nothing but it is the diagrammatic representation of an algorithm. We say it as an flowchart. Now here in flowchart, actually it only depicts the logic, okay, it only depicts the logic, and because of this flowchart it becomes very easy for us to write the program in high level language, and this flowchart also provides a documentation. Therefore this flowchart plays a very important role in the programming. Now here we have two different types of flowcharts. The first flowchart is the program flowchart and the system flowchart. What exactly this program flowchart or the system flowchart? System flowchart is nothing but it gives an overall view of the computer system environment, okay, in addition to the flow of operations for an algorithm. So usually this system flowchart is a one wherein it also, apart from the flow of the logic, it provides an overall view of computer system. Means in the sense it indicates the flow of data through the data processing system, okay. It will also indicates, it also like computer system environment in the sense, you know, it provides information like whether the program has to be stored in magnetic disk, whether the data is coming from the keyboard or the mouse it has to come, whether the output has to be printed onto the printer, okay, or it has to be displayed onto the monitor. Not it system flowchart not only gives you the symbols like how we have discussed in the class, you know, the simple flowcharts like, you know, start and then input, okay, and then we were using the parallelogram to read the input, then for calculation we were using the rectangle. Now this is a simple program flowchart. Now the system flowchart, apart from the logic, it also tells you like whether that flowchart has to be stored onto the magnetic disk you have to store, or should store it onto the hard disk, whether the input you have to read from the keyboard monitor, okay, whether the output should go to the printer or to the monitor, like this. It gives an overall view of, you know, computer system. Then who uses these system flowcharts? System flowcharts are mainly widely used by the designers, that is system designers it is being used. Now what is this program flowchart? Program flowchart is the only one that specifies the flow of operation, but it never specifies the computer environment in which the program should be executed. Say for an example, what we are going to we are discussing in the we have already discussed few flowcharts in the class. So those are the program flowchart wherein they are specifying only the flow of operations. Apart from that, did we come across any time that we need to write the program in C, C++, we need to write our program, we need to store our program in the hard disk only, so we need to display our flowchart onto the monitor only? Nothing of these sorts environments we have come across. We have only seen the logic of that particular flowchart. So such flowcharts we usually refer it as what? Program flowchart. Now let us see what are the advantages of having this flowchart. So very important and very easy. So these flowcharts were very easy to understand. See, there is no thing that syntax and rules and regulation we need to follow. Just we need to identify the input and we need to choose the specific symbol to represent an input. If at all, if it is a calculation, choose a specific symbol that represents the rectangle for the calculation. Okay, like this you need to easily, it will become programmer for easy to understand. Then even the flowcharts are very much easy to convert into the computer program, and it is independent of programming language. Like in the sense what, even if you are writing the code in C or C++ or in Java, whichever, it doesn't matter. Flowcharts remains the same and the symbols remains the same. Therefore, it is independent of programming language, and it is easy to debug. In the sense what, if you go wrong anytime in drawing the flowchart, you can easily replace with a different symbol of it. And then it gives more emphasizes in the sense what, it gives more importance to the representation of solution rather than following the syntax. In programs it's not like that. We need to follow the every syntax rules and syntax as well as semantics we need to follow of that particular programming language. But here in case of flowchart it is not so. We are mainly concentrating on the representation of the solution. Then, and these flowcharts also provides a good documentation. Documentation in the sense what, it will help to make the programmer to understand what the flowchart has been written about, in which step actually we have written the logic. You can add the remarks and you can even add the comments to it. That is what is a good documentation. What might be the disadvantage here? Disadvantage, it is nothing but it's quite time consuming. If at all, if your flowchart is too lengthy, then obviously it would be a time consuming. Because we need to use the flowcharts to represent your solution. Therefore, it might be little bit time consuming. And suppose if your flowchart is too lengthy, then it would become difficult to represent the logic or difficult to represent the solution out of it. So these are some of the advantages and the disadvantages. Now let us move to a different float, and lastly the disadvantage. Again, the alteration and modification could be made only by redrawing. Suppose if you need to modify or upgrade your flowcharts by adding a different modules to it, then we need to redraw it. We cannot make the adjustment within the same flowchart. Okay, that's what is the disadvantage. Moving on to the symbols. A very important question from your annual exam point. In almost most of the annual exam point, this question has been given. That is, explain the different symbols involved in the drawing in flowchart. Explain the different symbols involved in the drawing flowchart. So here the first one, we have the goal, which indicates the beginning or the end. See, in the annual exam you need to write all these three columns. You just give it as name here, symbols here, and the meaning here. That's in the page number 103. So all the three columns you need to mention its name. Depending upon its name, draw the symbols here, and then you should also give the meaning. If you are writing only 2, full marks will not be allotted. So see to that you write all these things. So oval represents beginning or end. Parallelogram represents the input or output statements. Okay. Rectangle, that is processing or some calculations or assignment if I have to do, then go for that's rectangle. Now this is what is decision making or branching statement, like for while, do while statement. Okay, simple if statement, if else and all, we are going to use this kind of decision making, which is called as what? Rhombus. Now this is what is your subprogram. Still we didn't come across this part. So let us in the further chapters we'll come across with this one. That time you'll get to know why to use this one. So that is subprogram. If in a program we have a subprograms to solve, then we are using the predefined process. Then for loop, if I have in my algorithm or the program, then the for loop, which is called as actually preparation. And then connection here, this is what is connector. Suppose if your flowchart is exceeding in a given page and you want to continue in the next page, then you can go for this particular connector. And then we have the control flow, that is arrows. This actually shows the flow of the logic. So very important question, the definition of flowchart, okay, and the different symbols involved in drawing the flowchart. Very important question. Let us move on to the next the different kinds of flowcharts. So the first flowchart what we need to discuss actually is, before going to the flowchart, let us come to know the importance of the flowchart. So why we need to study the flowchart? So first one is, it provides you the better way of communication. Okay, so when you look at the flowchart, when you look, if at all, if your a program is a lengthier one, you look at the program, in your programmer may get little confusion, then go for the algorithm. Okay, a little bit you can understand the logic because the algorithm is simple, but when you look at the flowchart, it provides a better way of communication of the logic. Okay, so it is more simpler comparatively to the program as well as an algorithm. Then next is effective analysis. Effective analysis in the sense what? So this, because of the flowchart, okay, we can analyze the program in more effective way. That means it gives an entire clear picture of what the program is about, okay, or what the problem is about. Then as I said, it provides you a good proper documentation. That means it would help the programmer in writing the comments or the remarks, like how in the program we used to write a comment which would represent with a single line, okay, and then if I have to have a single line comment, then it would begin with the front slash, two front slash, and if you want to have in multiple comments, then it would start with the front slash asterisk and end with the asterisk as well as the front slash. Like this, you were adding the comments or the remarks in the given program. Now similarly, even in the flowchart also, you can provide the documentation, whichever the steps you need to say to the programmer what step is what it is for, you can add the documentation there. Then it provides an efficient coding. Efficient coding in a sense what? It would guide the programmer or the user, which because this flowchart would act as a blueprint, okay, during the system analysis and the program development phase. Suppose if I have to develop any of the program, then you just look at your flowchart. Depending upon that, you can easily develop and you can easily analyze what the program is about. That is what is, it provides an efficient coding. Then it provides you the proper debugging, so it would help you. Suppose if you go wrong in any of the step, it would help you to easily to recognize it during the coding part. If you are going anywhere wrong, just look at the flowchart. By that you can easily make out in which step you have written the program wrongly, so that it would, flowchart would help you in the debugging process. Looking at the symbols, you can easily make out so whether it was an input, output, or which statement it should be. And the last one, the importance is that it is an efficient program maintenance. That means what? The maintenance of the program would become very easy with the help of the flowchart, because here it would help the programmer to put more efficient efforts mainly on the specific part. So wherever the specific important modules are there you can easily maintain the code. So these are some of the importance of the flowchart. Now let us move on to discussing the different flowcharts. So as per your textbook, we have the first flowchart to interchange the values of two variables, which we have already discussed in our regular class. Then we have a flowchart to find out the area and circumference of a circle. Almost this topic is also completed. And then flowchart to find the area and to find out the area of a triangle given the three sides. This algorithm's flowchart also we have completed with. Then flowchart to find the greatest of two numbers. This also we have completed. Now I'm going to discuss the flowchart which we haven't discussed in the class. So let us move on to the first flowchart. Now this is a flowchart to find the sum and average of a given numbers. Now look at this flowchart here. Now this is a flowchart that is without using arrays. We are trying to find the sum and the average of the numbers. Now so here the first step is to start. The next step, I am taking the two variables where I am initializing the sum to be 0, count to be as 0. Then I am reading the input n. Okay. So when it calculates, suppose if I give the input as 3 here, now initially how the sum would be calculated, that is sum plus n, that means sum is initially 0, so 0 plus n, so the value will be stored into the sum. Again count is equal to, I am taking one counter variable because I need to stop my sum. I need to stop finding the sum and average sum at certain point, right? I need to have to terminate my looping statement. So for that what I am taking, and I am taking a counter variable known as count, and I for every time the counter variable I would like to increment it. Now is count is less than n? If count value is less than n, do take the repetition. Again you need to calculate the sum. Suppose when count becomes greater than n, we need to stop the repetition. In fact, the control should go to the next statement wherein it will calculate the average. That is average, how we are calculating, sum divided by count, and finally I am going to print the sum and average and then finally stop. So here, and you need to see this is an oval symbol which marks for the start or the beginning. Now this is an assignment, a rectangle we are using for assignment here, and input and output statements. This is an input statement and this is an output statement wherein we are using the symbols, that is parallelogram we are using. Then for again the calculation we are using the rectangle. Now this is my decision making system, the branching statement. This is a rhombus, isn't it? Since I am making a decision here, I am using the rhombus, and again this is a calculation, I am using the rectangle. Finally I am going to stop it by using the oval. So this is how we need to draw the flowchart. I have traced the flowchart here. See, initially sum is equals to 0, count is equal to 0. I am taking the input value here to be n is equal to 3. Now actually if you observe, this is actually the do while format. Okay, we have already studied the syntax and the flowchart of the do while statement. So it's actually do while statement. So do sum is equal to sum plus n, count is equal to count plus 1. Now here I have written the substituted the values. Initially the sum value is 0 plus 3. 3 will be stored in the sum, and after that I am going to increment the count value. Count value was initially 0 plus 1, and new value I got this time the count value as 1. Now what is my condition at the finally? While count should be less than n. Now look at this count value, what we got here, we got it as 1. 1 is less than 3. Yes, the condition is true. Since your condition is true, go for the iteration again, go for the repetition again. When you go for the repetition again, where your control is coming for, whether 1 is less than n, yes, the condition is true, then go for the repetition. Again where you are joining, given the input as n. Now again we need to give the input, give n value remains the same, that would become 3 only. Now look at the statement. After you enter into the loop, what is there? Sum plus n. What is the latest value of sum we have calculated? That was 3, isn't it? So substitute the value. 3 plus 3. 3, this one is n, this one is sum. So I got the new value of sum to be as 6. Next step is to increment the count value. Previously count value was 1. So 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. Again check for the while condition, whether count is less than 3, whether 2 is less than 3, yes, your condition is true, 2 is less than 3. Again go for the repetition. When you go for the repetition again, n remains the same. This time sum value you look at. Previous sum value, latest value was 6, isn't it? So 6 plus 3, I got the new sum value as 9, and I am storing it in the sum. Next time again incrementing the count value, that is 2 plus 1, we got the count value as 3 we are getting. Again you check the condition, while count is less than the n value. What is the count value now? Please, new value we got it as 3. 3 is less than 3, the condition is false. Hence you stop iteration, and since your condition is false, you go for the n. You can go for true. Y stands for yes, that is true. N stands for false. Here now this condition becomes false. In that case the control goes to the next statement. What is there in the next statement? We need to calculate the average. When you look at the average, just substitute the values. Average is equal to sum divided by count. What is the sum value? We got it here as a 9. What is the count value? The latest value is 3. So 9 by 3, we got an average as 3. And finally print sum to be as 9, average to be as 3. Now this is a flowchart to find the sum and average of n numbers. I hope students you are able to clearly understand how to draw the flowchart and what is the logic behind this particular flowchart. Now let us move on to the next flowchart here. Now this is a flowchart to find the sum of digits in a given number. I hope already this flowchart, this program we have discussed in the class, but we haven't written any flowchart based upon this. That's why I'm explaining this one again. So look at here the symbol, sum of all the digits in the sum. Suppose for an example, if I'm giving the value as 123, if I give the input value as 123, it should give me output as total as 6, because 1 plus 2 plus 3 gives me the 6. That's what is the flowchart is about, sum of the digits in a given number. Suppose if I give 111, then the sum of digits in the given number 111 would be 3 for us. Now let us see the how did we draw the flowchart. Now start, input n, okay, sum is equal to 0. Now this is what while condition. One thing you should make out, suppose if I have the branching at the fag end, then we have to firstly we have to execute a certain steps of instruction, and then if we are checking the decision making, then definitely it will be do while statement. Okay, then if at all first we are checking the condition, then I am executing certain steps, then it will be definitely while condition. Okay, therefore it is an assignment statement. That's why I have used here rectangle. Then what I need to check is n is not equal to 0. If it is so, then try to enter into the loop and execute these set of statements. Again once you get a new n value, again it will go here, the repetition takes place. Again you need to check the n value. If it is equals to 0, then the control would go for the false statements. If it is true, then again a set of these set of instruction would be executed. Now and then finally I'm going to print the sum, and to print the sum we have taken the parallelogram, and finally we are going for stop. Now look at here the tracing. Here the input value I have taken as a 12 and sum I have taken it as 0. As per this, while 12 is not equal to 0, yes, the condition is true. If it is true, then I'm just substituting the value here, n mod 10, that is 12 mod 10. When I do 12 mod 10, 10 ones are 10, I got the remainder as 2. So 2 I have stored it in the remainder. Finally, next step what I'm doing is sum plus remainder. So 0 plus 2, I got the new sum as 2. Then again n divided by 10, in the sense 12 divided by 10. When I do the 12 divided by 10, I should see the quotient here. So what I get the quotient here as 1 I got. Again repetition takes place. When the repetition takes place for the second iteration, what will be my latest value of n value? That would is 1. 1 is not equal to 0. Yes, your condition is true. Then again repeat the same steps. So that is now the latest value of n is 1. So 1 mod 10. When 1 mod 10, when you do 10 zeros are 0, I got the remainder as 1. Store it here in the remainder. Next is what? Sum plus remainder. That is what is the latest value of sum? That is 2 here. So 2 plus 1 I got. Then I got it as 3. Okay, the latest value of sum. Finally, 1 divided by 10 when you do, I got the this one quotient as 0. Again, repetition takes place. While 0 is not equal to 0, the condition becomes false. Once this condition becomes false, you are not executing here. In fact, your control goes to the next statement. What is there in the next statement is to print the sum. When I print the sum, what the sum is having its latest value as 3. So I'll print the value as 3. Finally, I get an output as the sum of the digits in a given number 12 is 3. I'm going to print the value directly, and finally I'm going to stop. So this is how we are drawing the flowchart to find the sum of digits in a given number. I hope students the flowcharts what we are discussing are clear. Please practice these flowcharts because these are important from your exam point of view. Thank you students. We'll meet in our next class with a few more flowcharts, and we shall proceed with the different types of errors in our next class. Thank you students. Take care of yourself.